When the class was over, Sophia was the one who left the class first. Sophia, she heard Sarah's voice from behind. She stopped her steps after coming out of the class and turned around. Sarah and Nolan rushed toward her with a worried look. "Sophia, are you okay?" Sarah inquired. Sophia gave Sarah a nod of assurance and glanced behind her. Sarah turned her head and saw Bruce coming out of the class. His eyes fell on Sophia as he smirked. He raised his hand and acted like he gave Sophia a salute, then strolled in the opposite direction. "Bastard," Sarah muttered angrily. "Sophia, don't worry. We can talk to the professor again," Nolan said. "It's okay, guys. I am totally fine. Professor will only get angry," Sophia replied. "No, you are not fine. You looked so happy today, but that bastard ruined your mood." Sarah let out an angry tone, as if she were cursing Bruce more in her mind. Nolan gave her a confused look and raised a question. "Happy about what? Is there anything special?" Sarah pushed Nolan's arm and locked her arms with Sophia's. "You don't have to know. That's a girl thing." He rolled his eyes. "You always do this. Whenever you don't want to reply about anything, you say, 'That's a girl thing.'" Sophia chuckled when she saw they started bickering like cute lovers. "You two are lovebirds," she said, shaking her head. Later, Sophia headed to attend the rest of the classes. While attending one, she got a message from that unknown number. "Flowers and coffee both have strong smells, but I like the one the most. Do you know why?" Sophia stared at the message. Since she believed it was Brian, she asked, "Why?" "They reminded me of you." Sophia blushed. When did Brian become so romantic? She recalled the memories of last night. She closed her eyes and headed down in the seat while thinking about the kiss. The way he kissed her, said sorry to her, and notified her that he could do that again, it was obvious that he had feelings for her. She did not reply, and she locked her phone. She smiled like a crazy girl. She was over the moon. "I had never thought it would turn out like this. My mate loves me," she thought and grinned, looking at the sky through the window next to her bench. When it was her time to go to the office, she put all the books in the locker. She did not have to change her clothes daily, since Brian had bought her clothes. She could wear them at both places. They were not formal, yet gentle clothes. As she closed the locker and turned around, she gasped. "What's wrong with you, man?" "You almost scared me to death," she said to the man in front of her. "Well, nothing will happen to you, darling. Don't worry," he replied, placing his hand beside her head on a locker. She tried to ignore him and turned to leave, but he placed his other hand on the other side and caged her between his arms. Sophia looked at him with a stunned face. "What do you want? Didn't you hear what the professor told you? You should get in touch with your group members." Sophia lifted her hand and motioned her finger between them. "Like this?" "No, not like this, but I know one of my group members is stubborn. She won't talk to me if I don't stop her like this." Sophia shoved his chest all of a sudden, which took him aback. He did not expect her to push him like that. He took a step back from the shove. "Don't come near me again." "I don't like that," Sophia warned him with a cold look. She then turned and walked to the entrance. Bruce clenched his jaw and followed her behind. "You did not reply to me yesterday." She did not let out a single word. She behaved as if she did not listen to him. He grabbed her wrist tightly. She turned to him and tried to yank it away. "Leave my hand." "Answer me first." Sophia glanced around and found others looking at them. She found Luisa glaring at her. "Do you want to create a scene here?" she asked Bruce. He shook his head in reply. "No, but what is on your mind? I want to know that." "Why do you need to know?" "You know the answer. I love you." She stared at him. Why was he making everything tough for me? "Bruce, let her go." She heard Sarah's voice. She came to me and tried to break his grip. Bruce frowned at her. "Do you have the strength to break it?" Nolan held Sarah's hand and moved her away from us. "Nolan, smack him. How dare he touch Sophia?" Sarah shouted. "Bruce, let go of Sophia's hand," Nolan said to Bruce. Bruce glanced at Sarah and then moved his gaze to Nolan. "Tell your girlfriend to shut her mouth. Or what will you do?" "Don't you dare, Bruce. She is my mate." Bruce scoffed at him. It looks like nowadays everyone is after their mates. He turned his attention back to Sophia. She knew he had indicated his words to her. She saw Nolan and Bruce moving toward one another for a fight. So she grabbed Bruce's arm with her other hand and started pulling him outside. "Stop it, Bruce. Come with me." He obeyed her like an obedient child. He turned his head to Sarah and Nolan, then smirked at them. Sophia took him outside. "What do you want, Bruce?" "You. Shut up. I have no time for this nonsense." He let go of her wrist and stepped close to her. She did not move and glared at him. "Do you show this cold look to him too?" he asked, lifting his hand to touch her cheek. But before he could touch her, she pushed his hand away and stepped backward. She did not want to hide it anymore. It was clear that he knew the truth anyway. "He is not like you. He is different. Even if I want to, I can't show him my this side." His eyes widened as if he did not expect me to accept it. His surprised face turned grim. "You can't be with him," he muttered to her. As she remembered the kiss between her and Brian, she replied, "We are together now, so don't try to disturb me." "What if I do? What will you do to me?" His eyes were giving her challenges. She smiled at him and replied, "I will complain to my mate that another man is disturbing me." Her response caused him to look frozen. She knew that he was afraid of his big brother. That was why she told him that. She turned around and headed to get out of campus. She thought he would stop approaching her after learning that she was with his big brother now. But he spoke out from behind, just like yesterday. However, this time, his words were different. "You are right. He is not like me. He is not Bruce, but Brian. You only know CEO Brian. If you think he has only this side, then you are wrong. You haven't seen the real Alpha Brian yet. He will hurt you more than I ever hurt you. Mark my words." Sophia turned around and frowned at him. "What did you say? Why are you talking like CEO Brian and Alpha Brian are both different people?" Bruce walked to her and stopped in front of her. He looked into her eyes and muttered, "You will understand when he breaks your heart. That's why I'm telling you to come back to me." She scoffed at her. "You are aware that you are unable to prevail against him and his might. This is the reason you are trying to brainwash me. But let me tell you, I won't listen to you. Today I'm telling you directly that I fell for your brother. Do whatever you want. I don't care. Don't come between us." Bruce felt a pang in his heart. "I can't even think of you with someone else, baby. Please don't do this with me." She was taken aback. She could see remorse in his eyes. She took a deep breath and averted her gaze from him. "I am getting late. I hope you will take the group work seriously and won't trouble me." She turned around and continued to head to the bus stop. Behind her, Bruce was staring at her back. He tightened his fists as his eyes turned cloudy. "I can't let this happen. I can't see you with my brother. I will make sure you can't be with him, Sophia." Meanwhile, Sophia took a bus and went to the company. Before stepping inside the company, she inhaled deeply. She smiled at everyone as they greeted her. She halted her steps when she heard the voice of the receptionist as she was passing the area. "Miss Sophia." She turned to the woman and asked, "Yes?" "She is Angelina Gulliver. Can you please take her to the CEO's office? She came here to meet him." Sophia turned her head in the direction of the elevator. She noticed a beautiful woman in a green dress. "Are you talking about her?" "Yeah. May I know who she is, by the way?" "You don't know her? She is Alpha's clothing designer. We always have someone escort her to the CEO's office. But today, she said she could go alone. Since I saw you, I wondered if you would be able to accompany her." Sophia nodded her head as she walked toward the woman. She stood right next to her and asked, "Miss Angelina?" The woman turned to her and inquired, "Sorry? May I know you?" Sophia smiled at her lightly and pressed on the VIP elevator, which the woman noticed with her scanning eyes. "I'm Sophia Berge, the CEO's personal assistant." She raised her brow. "Really? Oh, okay. Nice to meet you." She then stretched her hand towards Sophia after she had finished saying that. The sweetness of her voice left Sophia speechless, and she extended her hand to shake hers. "Please come with me in this elevator," Sophia invited her as she entered the elevator. With a nod, Angelina stepped inside with her. She looked at Sophia without blinking her eyes, which made Sophia feel awkward. However, she could only chuckle. "Why is she looking at me like that?" Sophia thought and tried to avoid her gaze. When the elevator door opened, they headed to the CEO's office. Sophia started to feel nervous. The more she went close to Brian's cabin, the more memories of last night appeared in her mind. Sophia knocked on the door and waited outside with Angelina. When they heard Brian's voice, they entered the room together. Sophia gulped when her eyes fell on Brian's back. He was standing close to the window while smoking. Sophia was just about to tell him that his designer had just come to meet him. But before that could happen, Angelina intervened by raising her hand to stop her. Sophia observed her as Angelina made her way toward the desk. She was under the impression that she would take a seat on one of the chairs. Nevertheless, Angelia strolled past the desk and stood behind Brian. Brian was still looking outside. Angelina opened her bag and took out a cigarette, then put her bag down on the desk. Turning her attention to Brian, she gave him a shoulder pat. Brian turned around and looked at her. "You are late," he muttered to Angelina. There was a chuckle coming from her as she bit the cigarette that she was holding. She moved toward Brian's face and lit her cigarette from Brian's cigarette. As she stood a considerable distance away, Sophia gazed at them with eyes filled with shock. She found the thing intimate and felt a twinge inside her heart. Angelina moved after igniting the cigarette and inhaling the smoke. Brian stared at her with an indifferent face, but Sophia felt hurt that he did not say anything to Angelina about it. "The day before yesterday, I went to the pack house. Your mom and dad have told me that you are not staying with them," Angelia said to him. "Why did you go to the pack house?" Brian asked. "Why can't I?" "I asked the reason." She chuckled and moved aside to look outside through the window. "I was summoned by your dad. He had something special to talk about." She paused and turned her head toward him. "I picked up a lot of fresh information. Do you want me to tell you?" As she asked him, she gave him a wink. Sophia took a step back. While she was turning her back on them, she clenched her fists tightly. She did not wish to continue to listen to the conversations that they were having. They looked really close. The manner in which Angelina was describing her visit to the pack house, as well as the manner in which she was interacting with Brian, gave the impression that they were very close. So many negative thoughts came to Sophia's mind. Brian did not even care to glance at her. She made her way to the door and grabbed the doorknob to open it, but she heard Brian's voice. "Where are you going?" She turned to him and gave him a quick glance before shifting her focus to Angelina. "I don't want to interrupt you." Brian frowned at her and replied, "I haven't yet given you permission to leave." Sophia lowered her head and stood at the door after letting go of the doorknob. "Is she the little birdie?" Sophia heard Angelina's voice. She looked at her and saw her smirking at her. She had no idea what Angelina was talking about. "She is my personal secretary," Brian replied to her. With a raised eyebrow, Angelina shifted her gaze to Brian. "Personal? I see. Does she know her boss is a coward?" Sophia's eyes widened, not by Angelina's question, but by the way Brian grabbed Angelia's neck. "How dare you talk to your alpha like that?" he growled at her. Sophia rushed to Brian to stop him from killing the woman. "Leave her. She will die," Sophia said, trying to remove Brian's hand from Angelina's neck. Angelina gave her a courteous look before breaking out into laughter. Sophia was bewildered after seeing that. Her hands loosened when she saw Angelina's eyes turn black to emerald. Sophia parted her lips in shock as she thought, "She is a witch." After raising her hand, Angelina reached out and gripped Brian's wrist. He groaned as if her touch felt like an electric shock. Instead of removing his hand, he pressed on her neck tightly. Angelina patted his hand. "I'm sorry, you are not a coward." Brian scoffed at her and moved her hand away from her neck. By turning his head toward Sophia, who appeared to be disoriented, he gave her a warning. "Don't ever try to stop me in any circumstance. It's not something I like." Sophia lowered her head. "Yes, Alpha." Angelina coughed a little and shook her head. "Brian Morrison, I will make you drink the poison potion that I made 2 weeks ago." Brian rolled his eyes. "Sure, why not? The same thing that happened 10 years ago will happen again. It will fail again." 10 years ago, they had known one another for such a long time, Sophia thought. She shook her head and wanted to leave the room. She had no idea who the woman was or what her connection was with Brian. "You made a promise to me that you would keep quiet about it, didn't you? Why did you seem to bring up memories of my troubled past?" Angelina said this to him while she was standing next to him. "Alpha, I think I should leave now. I have other things to do," Sophia said sadly. She did not like how Brian was talking with the girl in a friendly tone. That was the first time she had ever witnessed him conversing with another woman. In fact, he was reacting like nothing had happened yesterday. Was that kiss nothing to him? There is nothing for you to do at this moment, so stay here. I am afraid this woman will steal something from my cabin and do black magic on me, Brian said while glaring at Angelina. Angelina laughed and sat down on a chair as if this man had not attempted to kill her a few seconds ago. Happy to learn that you are afraid of someone, even if it's only in the mocking. Keeping her gaze fixed on the floor, Sophia stood close to the desk. She was not feeling well. She thought Brian liked her, but his behavior was saying something else. She bit her lower lip to control her emotions. At that time, someone knocked on the door. Brian permitted the person to come inside. A man entered the cabin. The moment Angelina looked at the man, she immediately stood up. "This is my manager. Come here. Put it down here." Sophia observed that the man was holding a large black box and a bouquet. Angelina reached out and grabbed the bouquet just as the man was placing the box on the desk. Angelina handed it to Brian. "For you." Sophia took a quick glimpse at the flower and reflected on the message she had received from the unknown number. Brian talked to her about the flowers. He said he liked it more than his coffee since it made him think about her. However, someone else was giving him flowers. She looked away from the bouquet and gazed at the box without any emotion. "You can go now," Angelia said to her manager. The man nodded at her and left the cabin. After putting the bouquet to the side, Brian turned his attention to the box. "What do you have for me?" Angelina opened the box. Sophia's eyes fell on the various ties. "I have come up with a fresh collection for your upcoming party." "How is it?" Angelina asked with excitement. Brian turned his attention to Sophia and asked, "Which one?" Sophia turned to him with a stunned look. "Huh? Select one." Sophia blinked her eyes a few times. "Did he tell her to select? Why?" "Of course. She is your private secretary. She should do everything for you," Angelia said, turning the box in the direction where Sophia was standing. Sophia realized Angelina was saying it right. It could be the only reason he asked that. She went to the box and looked at the ties that were inside. When she saw that all of the ties were black, she could not help but be completely taken aback. Usually, Brian did not wear ties most of the time. Perhaps he wore ties only at parties. She pointed her finger to a tie and said, "This one." As Angelia removed the tie from the box, she flashed a grin. "Let me try it on him." Letting out that, she was about to walk to Brian, however, he stopped her by saying, "I don't need to try it. I'm okay with whatever she chooses." Angelina smirked as if she found his words interesting. She turned her head toward Sophia and mumbled, "Not bad. What if she herself assists you in giving it a shot?" Sophia was shocked. She immediately looked at Angelina, who winked at her. She had no idea why Angelina had made such a statement. In fact, she thought Angelina liked Brian, which was why she went closer to him. Angelina handed the tie to her and pushed her lightly toward Brian. "Please, help this lazy man." Sophia glanced at Brian, whose gaze met hers. She gulped and bent down toward him, avoiding his gaze. He did not stop her as he stared at her. Just when she touched his collar, Angelina spoke out. "I think it will look okay on you. You don't need to try anymore." Brian turned to her and glared at her. She grinned at him and said, "Oh yes, I remember something to do right now. See you later," Angelina said to Brian as she grabbed her bag hurriedly. It appeared as though she was scared that she had finally offended Alpha Brian. Sophia was watching Angelina without moving. She saw her open the door and turned to her. "Bye, little birdie," she said, waving her hand at her, then leaving the cabin. Sophia did not know how to react. She sighed and stood straight to move away from Brian. Brian, on the other hand, grabbed her hand and tugged her toward him. Her eyes widened as she was on the verge of falling on Brian. He looked into her eyes and asked, "Why are you running away from me?" She withdrew her gaze from his and moved away from him. "Since I am your secretary, I have work to do." He stood up without leaving her hand. Sophia realized how tall he was when he slowly got up from his chair. She tried to take a step back, but he pulled her closer to him and said, "Help me with the tie that you have chosen for me. I want to see how it will look on me." A stunned expression appeared on Sophia's face as she gazed at him. Brian directed his gaze toward the tie she was holding in her hand. She lowered her head and moved her hand toward his shirt collar. She was blown away by just looking at his broad shoulder, which caught her attention. She had a difficult time concentrating on what she was doing. She was nearly drawn to him by the scent of his cologne. Her wolf began to react to her as if she wanted to go close to her mate. While she focused her attention on the tie, Sophia took several deep breaths. Meanwhile, Brian continued to stand there without uttering a single word as he released his grip on her hand. Sophia put the tie around his collar and started to fix it. She was so preoccupied with ensuring that she was doing it perfectly that she failed to notice the man who was staring at her. Brian's gaze wandered all over her face. Her beautiful eyelashes looked captivating when she flickered them. The sweetness of her lips, which he had tasted the night before, gradually came into his line of sight. It was hard for him to control himself last night. Whenever she was in his presence, his wolf started to act in a way that was completely out of control. "Done," Sophia let out with a smile on her face as she examined the tie. She looked at him to see his reaction, but was taken aback when she found him looking at her. She gulped as she simply gazed into his intriguing eyes. They appeared to be hooked on her as if they could see her soul. Alpha, I." She was unable to utter a single word before he abruptly turned around and started walking in the direction of the couches. It was brought to Sophia's attention that there was a mirror located near the couches next to the flower vase. He stood there and looked at himself. She walked toward him and stood behind him. She also glanced at the mirror and saw his reflection, then at his expression. He held the tie and loosened it a little, then said to her, "Not bad. You have a good choice." "Thank you, Alpha," she mumbled quietly. He turned around and returned to his desk. Her eyes were following his every movement without moving. He grabbed the bouquet of flowers and came back to her. She glanced at it to know why he took that to her. He handed the bouquet to her and muttered, "Take it." She was surprised as she held it. She looked at him and said, "It's your bouquet." "I saw you glancing at it a while ago. I don't like flowers anyway." Sophia stared at him for a brief second. Didn't he say to her in the message that he liked flowers? Was he saying it so that he could give it to her? She shook her head and replied, "I can't take it." She was about to return it to him when he spoke out to stop her. "Why?" She cleared her throat while looking at the floor and replied, "That's not for me. It's your bouquet. I can't take the flowers that some other woman gifted you." Her voice was low, but he heard her clearly. She bent to the tea table near the couch and placed the bouquet on the table. "Thanks for offering, by the way." Saying that, she turned to leave the room. However, she paused when a strong hand wrapped around her waist. Brian pulled her to him, and her back pressed against his chest. When she saw them together in the mirror, she came dangerously close to letting out a gasp. He was wrapping his arms around her waist from behind her, and it was a very intimate gesture indeed. When his eyes met hers in the mirror, she averted her glance shyly and turned her head away from the mirror. "Alpha, why are you so upset today? What is bothering you?" he asked, enveloping his other hand around her waist to cage her totally. "Nothing," she mumbled. After making a frowning expression, he turned her around so that she was facing him. With an air of solemnity, he inquired, "What happened?" Sophia slowly raised her head to look at him. She did not know if she should ask him the question. What if it made him mad? Despite the fact that she liked the closeness that developed between them, she did not like to give herself false hope. "Who was she?" She blurted out, then immediately moved her head away. He was silently gazing at her. She thought he would not answer her. If he could ask her about other boys, then why could she not ask him about other women? Did her question offend him? "It's okay. I'm sorry for asking that personal question." She took a deep breath and held his hands to break the grip when she found him quiet. But Brian's grip tightened as if he were adamant about letting her go. "She is my childhood friend," he replied. She looked at him with a shocked face. She did not expect him to reply to her. "As you saw, she is a witch. We were brought up together because her mother is my mom's friend. So she is just a close friend who likes to tease me." "Oh," she mumbled while nodding her head. She realized that she mistook his relationship with his friend. "By the way, why were you asking?" he asked, lowering his head to reach her level. Sophia blushed at the closeness between their faces. She remembered the kiss and turned her head shyly. She felt him moving closer to her ear and muttered something, which gave her chills down her spine. "I am not a womanizer who seeks out various women to satisfy my desire, but someone caught my attention and I find it hard to let her go." Sophia let out a moan when Brian bit her earlobe lightly. She immediately put her hands on his shoulder and clutched his shirt to stop herself from moaning loudly. Her moan made Brian tighten his hands around her waist. He tilted his face as his mouth let go of her neck and shifted to her neck. Just the moment his lips brushed on her neck, a ringtone began to echo throughout the room. Brian arched his eyebrows when he realized it was his phone. Sophia's body jolted up in response to the ringtone, and she tried to move away immediately. His touches almost caused her to become lost and possessed. His touches were like magic, making her go insane. His grip loosened as she took a step back from him. She lowered her head and tucked the strands of her hair behind her ear. The fact that Brian let out a long, deep breath was an indication that he was not happy with the unexpected phone call. He walked over to his desk and grabbed his phone. He wanted to cut the call to whoever had called him, but when he noticed the number, he glanced at her, and then he received the call. "Abraham." Sophia looked at him the moment he heard him let out her brother's name. "What happened? Give me a valid reason to disturb me," Brian asked. His eyes never left Sophia. She looked away from him and walked to the door. Brian stopped her as he asked her, "Where are you going?" Sophia glanced at him and replied in a low voice so that her brother could not listen to her from the other end of the phone. "I need to check your schedule," she replied, opening the door. Brian did not stop her this time. Sophia thought her brother had something important to talk about with Brian, so she did not want to disturb them in their conversation. While she was leaving, she heard Brian saying, "Don't worry about it. I will train you myself." She smiled while closing the door after leaving his cabin. She was happy that he was treating his brother well. "Train my brother himself?" she thought, moving toward her cabin. The thought of what he would look like while training others made her cheeks flush. She shook her head and went to her cabin. She sat down and checked Brian's schedule for today. He had no meeting today, but tomorrow he would have to attend a meeting in a hotel, which was really important. She went to get a cup of coffee for him and went to his cabin after an hour. She saw him talking with another alpha on his phone, so she did not disturb him, put the cup on his desk, and left the cabin quietly. As she returned to her cabin, she began to work on some projects. After a while, she heard a knock on the door. "Please come in." A man entered the cabin with a small bouquet of red roses. "Miss Sophia, this is for you," he said, handing the bouquet to her. "For me?" she asked with a surprised look as she got to her feet. "Yes, who sent it?" "Don't know, someone left it for you." Sophia grabbed the bouquet and thanked the man. When the man left, she sat in her chair again. The thought of something surprised her. It was not the bouquet that Angelina gave Brian, but a new bouquet of roses. Did Brian send it to her because she refused to take that bouquet? She smiled and sniffed at the smell of the fresh roses. Suddenly, she heard a tone coming out of her phone. She grabbed her phone and checked the message that popped up on the screen in the notification bar. A bouquet of roses for a beauty. Sophia blinked her eyes as she stared at the message. She could not believe Brian called her beautiful. Something caught her eye as she was stroking her fingers at the roses. She found a small card inside the bouquet. She opened it and saw what was written inside. "A small apology to upset you, your admirer BM." Sophia chuckled as she gently stroked her thumb over the letter BM. "Brian Morrison, why do you suddenly start to behave so romantic? You kissed me last night. You tried to get close to me an hour ago, and now, when you saw that I refused to take someone else's bouquet, you sent this to me. You even realized that I was upset by overthinking about you and your friend," she said while looking at the card. But she did not include those in the message, because if Brian wanted to flirt with her anonymously, she would like to continue it. Admirer was the name she chose to save the unknown number. She began to type to say something in reply. "Thank you. I like roses." He replied in a few seconds as if he were waiting for me. "I want you to place them in the flower vase on your desk so that it can give you refreshment when you work." Sophia raised her brows. He knew every detail of her cabin. Of course, he knew. After all, he was the CEO of this company. Okay. She waited for another message, but when she noticed she did not get any reply, she stood up and put the flower in the vase. Then she continued to work. She did not need to go to Brian's cabin again. The whole day, she concentrated on her work without any disruption. When it was time to leave the office, she left her cabin and turned in the direction of Brian's cabin. She noticed that Brian was also coming out of his cabin. She gave him a nod and headed to the elevator together. She smiled sheepishly as she thought about the flowers he had sent for her today. His messages were killing her inside with devotion. As soon as they entered the elevator, she lowered her head and did not engage in any conversation with him. When he turned his head to face her, he asked, "What is my schedule for tomorrow?" She looked at him and replied, "You have a meeting tomorrow morning." "With whom?" "With Alpha Simon." He gave her a nod and switched his attention to the door as it opened. They exited the elevator and made their way to the entrance of the company. As they came out of the company, Sophia noticed Delta Edger. Edger gave her a kind wave before approaching them. "Hi, what's up?" Sophia greeted him with a grin and remarked that she was doing well. While Brian was looking at him, he inquired about the cause of his sudden arrival. "You need to come with me," Delta Edger said to Brian. Sophia let the Alpha and Delta talk to each other as she bowed her head to Brian and said, "Alpha, I'm leaving." Brian frowned at her. "Where?" "To my house. Wasn't it obvious? Why did he even ask?" She realized that he might have wanted to drop her off. "It's late. My driver will drop you off at your house," Brian said, motioning to his driver who was standing outside his car, waiting for him. His driver opened the back door for Sophia. She glanced at Brian's car and asked him, "Aren't you going with Edger?" Edger raised his brow as he noticed them talking. "I will go with him in his car. You can go with my car. I don't think it's safe for you to go alone." In a surprised expression, Sophia parted her lips. Brian had demonstrated his concern for her in a straightforward manner. She blushed and got in his car. The driver closed the door and proceeded to the driver's seat. Brian lowered himself to the window and looked at Sophia. "Don't go to the university tomorrow." "Why?" she asked while looking at his handsome face. "You must come and pick me up from my house in the morning. My secretary should be with me in the meeting." Sophia stared at Brian's back until he got in Edger's car and left. Brian's driver started the car and drove in the direction of her house. In order to suppress her smile, Sophia bit the bottom of her lip. The manner in which he lowered himself toward the window a short while ago almost caused her to lose her breath. She had no idea how they became so close that he started to talk so softly with her. Today, he did not show any signs of rage. In fact, he came closer to her. Slowly, she raised her hand and brought it to her neck. She let out a deep breath while thinking about how his nose touched her neck when they were in his cabin. If Abraham had not called at that time, who knew what was on Brian's mind? Leaning her back against the seat, she closed her eyes. There was a sheepish smile on her face, which she wanted to hide from the whole world. In all of the walls of her heart, there was only one person's face that started to become clear, and that name was Brian. He was now in her imagination and dreams. Her wolf was only howling out one name, and that was the name of her mate. It was not because of the mate bond, but she did end up falling in love with Brian. She lost her heart to him. She recalled Brian's words that he told her today. Assuring her that he was not a womanizer, he made it clear that she would not have to think about the possibility of him connecting with another woman. Not only that, he almost confessed his feelings for her by saying that she caught his attention and he did not want to let her go. "Miss, we arrived at your home." The driver spoke out. Sophia opened her eyes and realized that she had been drawn into Brian's thoughts, so that she could not feel when the car stopped moving. "Thank you," she remarked with a grin to the driver and a pleasant tone of voice. Despite the fact that the driver was a young man, it appeared as though he had been working for Brian for a considerable amount of time. It seemed as though he was taken aback by her kind behavior. He had the impression that the woman who was receiving Alpha's attention would be the one to be arrogant. After giving her a slight nod of his head, he exited the vehicle and then opened the door for her. She got out of the car and walked toward her house. As she was going to use her keys to unlock the door, she noticed someone opening the door from inside. Sophia, her mother said the moment she opened the door. She gave her mother a hug before accompanying her into the house. Today, her mother appeared to be in a high mood. "What's the matter, Mom? Is there something special?" "No, my baby. Your brother called me today." "Oh, that's good news," Sophia said as she took a seat on the couch with her mother. "What did he say?" she asked. "He was asking about you." "Mom, did you tell him about?" "No, I didn't. I told him that you were doing a job for another company. He asked me why I allowed you to go without thinking about your safety. I said my friend's son is also working there, and he took care of you." Sophia sighed while shaking her head. "Mom, no one is my babysitter." Her mother stroked her head and replied, "You know I had to say something to your brother. As you told me, I didn't tell him about your job at Morrison Group." "Thank you, Mom." I embraced her. They had dinner while talking about how they could surprise Abraham when he returned home. "Your brother was saying that Alpha promised to train him. Because he was having difficulties with some of his practice, Alpha gave him assurance about it. We are blessed to have an Alpha like him," Sophia's mother said to her. Sophia chewed her food while smiling. "You are right. We are blessed." Within her heart, she had the feeling that she was extremely fortunate to have him as her mate. After saying goodnight to her mother, Sophia went to her room. Having changed out of her dress and into her pajamas, she then climbed onto the bed. As soon as she closed her eyes, she began to recall everything that had occurred over the day. When she thought about the increasing closeness that she and Brian had developed toward one another, she covered her face with her blanket. She tried to sleep so that tomorrow she would not be late to go to Brian's house. When she opened her eyes, she yawned and glanced outside the window. Her eyes widened as she sat up and hurriedly grabbed her phone to check the clock. Upon seeing that she had not gotten up late, she exhaled a sigh of relief and relaxed her shoulders. She went to take a shower and wore a dress for the meeting. She went downstairs and found that her mother had just woken up. "Mom, I have to go to the office directly today." "What about your breakfast?" "I'll have breakfast in the company, Mom. Now, bye. I don't want to be late," she said, giving a kiss on her mother's cheek. "Take care." Her mother waved her hand at her while standing at the door. Sophia called a cab and made her way to Brian's residence. After getting out of the cab, she paid the driver and glanced at the guards. They stopped her at the gate, but when she showed them her company's ID card, they realized that she was Brian's personal secretary. They opened the door and let her enter the house. When Sophia entered the house, she discovered that there was complete silence throughout the entire house. She turned her head to the guard who was outside the house. "Where is Alpha?" "He is sleeping in his bedroom." "Oh." She glanced around and then asked again, "Where are the maids?" "Last night, Alpha's mother fell sick, so Alpha sent all of his maids to her." It came as a complete surprise to Sophia when she learned about Brian's mother. Was she okay? Though she had behaved really badly with her, she still cared for her since she was Brian's mother. When she began to walk, the guard closed the door from outside. He did not lock the main gate, but only closed it. When Sophia switched her attention to the stairs, she remembered that she had forgotten to ask about Brian's bedroom. She went upstairs and entered the room first, where Brian let her stay when she was drunk. He was not in that room, which disappointed her. One by one, she closed 3 doors and did not find Brian's bedroom. When she noticed the last door, she walked to it and opened the door without knocking, as she was bored with the process of finding his room. But when she opened the door, a master bedroom appeared in her sight. She did not get a chance to look around since her eyes directly landed on the man who was sleeping on the bed. She gulped when her eyes fixed on the man. Brian was sleeping on his chest as his upper back was visible. His face was turning to the opposite side, so she could not see him. However, he was shirtless, and his blanket was only covering his lower back. Looking at the perfect skin of his upper back and his strong muscles made her heart race faster. As she lightly shut the door behind her, Sophia withdrew her gaze from his. To get a better look at his face, she crept over to the bed and moved to the opposite side of it. The moment her eyes got a glimpse of his face, she inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly. In his sleeping state, he looked innocent. It was as if the man who was sleeping in front of her was not the dangerous alpha that everyone feared. Her legs started to move in the direction of him without her being aware of it. Although she was there to wake him up so that they could be on time for the meeting, she couldn't help but be captivated by the handsomeness of his face. She bent down and gazed intently at him. With great attention, she stared at him. She found a mole on the left side of his neck. His arms were folded on the pillow, and he was resting his face on them. "So handsome," she muttered. As she could see that he was in a deep sleep, she stared at him for a long time. Her attention was drawn to his hair as it drooped over his forehead, endearing him to her. She reached out her hand and was about to touch the bangs to move away from his forehead. But before she could touch them, a hand grabbed her wrist and stopped her from doing so. Brian opened his eyes and turned around to lay on his back, which caused her to let out a gasp. She was so shocked that she tried to move away, but Brian's hold on her became more firm as he drew her wrist closer to him. As a result, her heels twisted, and she ended up falling on him. Sophia's eyes widened as she slowly looked into his eyes. Brian was looking at him, which made her nervous. Their faces were closer to each other. She paused when Brian wrapped his arm around her waist and asked, "You were what?" She gulped as she felt his touch on her waist. The way that her body was pressed against his caused her to feel warmth all over her body. Alpha, you are misunderstanding me. I came to wake you up." Brian studied her face as he asked, "By how?" "Staring at me and brushing my face?" She blushed in embarrassment. She looked away from him. He released her wrist and touched her hair strands before tucking them behind her ear so that he could get a clearer view of her face. She fluttered her eyelashes as she felt his fingers brushing her ear, giving her a new sensation on her skin. She cleared her throat and mumbled, "Good morning, Alpha." "Morning," he muttered while looking at her. Since he was still staring at her, she made an effort to divert her attention away from his intense gaze and toward something else. However, what drew her attention was the hands that she was pressing against his bare chest. She coughed lightly and pushed his chest to move away from him. The sight of her trying to move away from him caused him to loosen his hold on her. She stood up and immediately looked away from his bare chest when her eyes fell on his abs. Fortunately, he was dressed in sweatpants, which meant that she did not have to experience any further embarrassment. "I am very sorry. I should have knocked on the door before entering your bedroom," she mumbled with a flushed face while looking at a blank wall blankly. She could see from the corner of her eyes that he sat up and rested his back against the headboard. "When did you come here?" Brian asked her as he reached out to take the cigarette packet off the nightstand. "A few minutes ago," she replied, glancing at him. He lit the cigarette and puffed on the smoke. As he gazed at her, he blew the smoke out of his mouth. Sophia wanted to tell him not to smoke so much. She always saw him smoking. It was bad for his health, but she had not become that close to him to prevent him from doing anything. "How much time is left for the meeting?" he inquired carelessly. She was stunned by his behavior. She had always seen him in a serious mood. What had happened to this man suddenly? 3 hours, she responded after pulling out her phone from her bag to check the time. He nodded his head and removed the blanket from his body. By the time he got out of bed, she had already taken a few steps back. She gulped when he was about to walk past her, but decided to stop in front of her. Her face turned red as she faced his sizzling abs. He was so hot that she started to sweat. With the intention of avoiding staring at his elegant body, she lowered her head. Brian was still smoking, so the smoke made her cough a little. The moment Brian placed his palm on her head, she became completely still. She took a deep breath. Lowering his head down, he leaned closer to her ear. Get used to the smoke. You will have to smell it a lot from now on. His whispers caused shivers to go through her entire body. In an effort to resist the sensation that was developing inside of her, she bit her bottom lip. Brian chuckled at her reaction and then straightened his posture. She inhaled deeply when he lifted his hand and gently caressed her chin with his fingertips. He raised her chin to make her look at him. She pressed her teeth harshly on her lower lip to control herself. His eyes began to stroke her face and stop on her lips. He moved his thumb from her chin and touched her bottom lip. Her lips quivered at his touch. He pulled out her lip from her teeth and stopped her from biting it. Slowly, his thumb brushed over her bottom lip, and his eyes returned to look into her eyes as he let out a low yet deep voice. "Stop seducing me, mate." Sophia was shocked. She could not believe that Brian had just called her mate. She stared at him as she controlled her tears, which almost crawled into her eyes. Her attention was drawn to him by the intriguing look in his eyes, which compelled her to go closer to him. But she was lost in Brian's one word. Finally, he had accepted her as his mate. Before today, he had always demonstrated that he did not believe mate things, but only had to stay in the bond just for the law. However, today, he himself called her his mate. She wanted to hug him and say what she felt for him. She also wanted to call him her mate. "Mate," she mumbled while looking into his eyes. Her lower lip kept brushing his thumb while she let it out. Hearing her caused his brows to raise, as if he had suddenly become aware of what he had just said. He slowly let go of her chin and moved his thumb away from her lip. He slipped one hand into his pocket and raised the other hand to continue smoking. Sophia realized that he was still holding the cigarette between his two fingers. While he was silently looking at her, he took a long inhalation of the smoke. His silence caused her to feel nervous. She was the focus of his attention. He was the one who broke eye contact and walked past her to proceed to the closet. When he opened it, he pulled out a suit for him to wear. She was unable to tear her gaze away from him because he was so incredibly hot. She had never seen him in casual clothes, so looking at him in just sweatpants was something she had never imagined. Her eyes were fixed on him as she saw him holding the shirt and pants and placing the suit jacket on a couch close to the bed. He threw the cigarette butt on the floor and looked at her. "I'm coming in 10 minutes. She nodded her head immediately as his utterance pulled her out of her analysis of him. During the time that Brian was in the bathroom, Sophia had a peek around the room. Now she could view every corner of the master bedroom. As she walked around the room, she could smell Brian's scent in every corner. Her wolf started acting in a wildly chaotic way, as if she wanted to shift and sniff at the scent. The moment her gaze landed on the bed, she blushed as she reflected on what had happened a few minutes ago. Her mind was completely blown by the manner in which Brian had grasped her and dragged her into him at that moment. She covered her face in shyness. Every day, they were getting closer and closer. As she sat on the side of the bed, she cast a brief glance in the direction of the bathroom. "I want to learn you, mate. I want to be with you," she thought. After a while, the door opened, and Brian emerged from the bathroom wearing a white shirt and black pants. She got to her feet and remained silent as she observed him. His damp hair had fallen over his forehead, and he was wiping it off with a towel. She was taken aback by the extraordinary look he possessed. She realized that he looked different with his hair falling on his forehead. He dried his hair and brushed it back. With a smile on her face, she stared at him while standing in a corner. The fact that she had fallen deeply in love with him was something that she admitted to herself, and she did not care if she was acting like a fangirl. The emotions that she had for him were different from those that she had experienced with his younger brother. She was already quite young when she went into a relationship with Bruce. However, she was now mature, and she realized that mates were inseparable. They could not feel the same for another person as they felt for their mates. Sophia noticed Brian coming toward the couch. She reached for the suit jacket and looked at him. "Let me help you." He did not look surprised as he gave her a nod. He turned around and she stood behind him. She helped him to wear the suit jacket. She felt happy to do that. She walked out of the room with him and headed downstairs. When she glanced at the clock, she found that they still had a lot of time left for the meeting. "Won't you have breakfast?" she asked, thinking of preparing something for him. He nodded his head while making his way to the main door. "We will have breakfast in the company." "Okay," she replied, following him behind while tossing out the idea to prepare breakfast. Brian's driver opened the door for them. She maintained her silence during the entire ride as she sat next to Brian. However, she continued to cast a glance in his direction from time to time. Like a busy person, he grabbed his tab and began to check on the stock market. While looking at him, she never failed to carry a smile on her face at all times. The driver stopped the car in front of the company. As soon as Sophia stepped out of the car, her smile began to fade as she looked at the man who was standing outside the company. "Bruce?" she mumbled under her breath. Bruce made his way towards her and eventually came to a stop right next to Brian's car. "Why did you get out of your brother's car?" he asked with a dissatisfied look. She rolled her eyes. "Can't you see? Your brother is also with me." At that moment, Bruce's gaze fell upon the person who was seated inside the car. Brian got out of the car and walked to them. Sophia tried to calm herself as she was feeling both alpha male's presence. She knew Brian loved his younger brother a lot. The photo frame that she had accidentally broken with her hand was still fresh in her mind. She had seen the photos of the two brothers. He got very mad at her that day. "What are you doing here?" Brian asked Bruce as he stood beside Sophia. Bruce glanced at Sophia, then switched his attention to Brian. "Brother, I am here to talk to my ex-girlfriend. Can you give us some privacy?" Sophia was taken aback by Bruce's statement. Silently, she cast a peek in the direction of Brian, who was looking at Bruce indifferently. "No." Brian let out a simple word. She gulped as she noticed his arched brows as he stared at Brian. Bruce was getting angry at his big brother. On the other hand, even if he wanted to, he was unable to respond to him or show him his furious side. "Brother, but why? Why can't I talk to her?" Brian lifted his hand to check the time on his watch. "It's an office hour." "So?" Brian uttered. With a blank expression on his face, Brian turned his head toward him. "She is my personal secretary. Isn't it obvious that she will be required to be present around the time that I am at the office? She will have to be with me." Sophia looked away from Brian when he said, "She will have to be with me." She thought she would have run away from the two men at the time she noticed Bruce. They were brothers, and she did not want them to argue for her. "Bruce, why are you here?" she mumbled in a low voice. Brian raised a brow as he twisted his head to the side and tilted his head toward her to look at her. It was as though he did not want her to speak out at that moment. "Sophia, you didn't come to the campus. That's why I came to see you. I want to talk to you." Sophia took a deep breath as she realized that Bruce was speaking to her in a sincere way. She wondered whether he was referring to the new group or the future assignment when he made his statement. However, before she could say anything again, Brian started to walk forward. She looked at him and asked, "Alpha?" He turned his head to the side and said it in a cold tone. "Miss Berge, follow me." She took a deep breath and then cast a quick glance in Bruce's direction. "I can't talk to you right now. If it's about the group, I'll see you tomorrow on our campus," she whispered while walking past Bruce, then rushed her pace to follow Brian. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to them as soon as they entered the entrance hall together. Sophia was astonished by their judgmental gazes. They did not look welcoming at all. Just as they were ready to make their way to the elevator, Bruce's voice could be heard coming from behind them. "Brother, I want to talk to you." By turning her head, Sophia darted a glimpse in Bruce's way. She frowned at him, as she thought he would say something to Brian about her. Once it was brought to everyone's attention that their alpha's younger brother had come to the company, everyone started exchanging glances with each other. It was very rare for him to come here. Brian glared at everyone as his eyes roamed around to look at each and every one. The air of dread captured everyone's hearts as they almost trembled under his gaze. Alpha Brian exuded a certain air that they were unable to match or surpass. "Back to work," Brian said to them. Immediately, everyone turned their heads away from the three people who were their sole attention, and then they returned to their work. Brian turned around to face Bruce. When Sophia noticed that the atmosphere between the two brothers had become icy for no apparent reason, she rubbed her palms together in nervousness. "I'm busy right now," Brian replied to Bruce. He was about to turn back to the elevator, but Bruce stepped in his way. "No, brother, I wanted to talk to you right now." Sophia found him stubborn. He once told her how much he admired his big brother. He used to talk about him a lot, but she could not forget how his big brother spoiled him with money and gave him permission to do anything in his pack. Brian did not utter a single word as he continued to stare at Bruce. His eyes were dark despite the fact that his face was calm, which indicated that he did not appear to be happy with Bruce's behavior at the moment. When Bruce saw him staring at him, he swallowed and cleared his throat. "Brother, it will take only a few minutes, please." Sophia was shocked by what she was seeing. She had never witnessed Bruce react so fearfully in front of Brian. On the other hand, who could maintain their composure in the presence of such a powerful person? Even his father was afraid of him. "Go to the reception desk and ask about scheduling an appointment. When I have some spare time, I will give you a call." The voice of Brian was piercing. Following the inhalation of a deep breath, Bruce nodded his head. "Okay, brother." Sophia, who was standing next to Brian, caught Bruce's attention as he looked at her. Before he could say anything to her, Sophia went to the elevator and pressed the button to call it. Brian walked past Bruce and entered the elevator with Sophia. In the presence of silence, Sophia continued to cast her gaze in Brian's direction on the elevator mirror. He did not speak to her or even look at her once. Why did Bruce even come here? Brian must be angry with me again. How can I fix his anger issues? She thought while shaking her head. As soon as the elevator door opened, Brian made his way straight to his cabin. Sophia, on the other hand, went to make coffee for Brian. After making a phone call to the workers of the canteen and instructing them to deliver Brian's breakfast to his cabin, she proceeded to the coffee machine. As she stood in front of the machine, she overheard the conversations that were taking place among the other women, who were the employees of the company. How can this young girl turn out to be so clever? Sophia paused as she heard it. On this floor, she was younger than others, since she was only 18. She knew people referred that to her since they were aware that if they took names, it would create problems for them. Sophia hissed as her finger came into contact with the hot coffee when she heard one of the women's dirty remarks about her. Today she came to the company with Alpha in his own car. All of us are aware of what it entails. She slept with him for money. After all, she was able to secure the position by spreading her legs to him. "Sophia, are you okay?" Sophia heard Selena's voice. She put the coffee mug on the counter and turned to her. "Miss Selena." As soon as the women heard her voice and turned around, they were taken aback when they realized that Sophia was there. "Oh my God, Miss Sophia, what happened to you?" One of them hurried over to Sophia and gently took her hand. It was clear to Sophia that she was only acting in order to conceal the nasty thoughts they had, so she yanked her hand away. "I'm okay, thank you," Sophia muttered, turning to hold the coffee from the counter. "Sophia, treat your wound. Your finger is burnt." Sophia smiled at Selena, and she tightened her lips. "Thanks for the care, Miss Selena." Sometimes she felt that only Selena was the one who was genuine in this company, and all the other women here were fake. Before she left, Sophia turned her head to the women who were talking badly about her. "Instead of gossiping about who has come to the company with whom, I believe that you should all concentrate more on the work that you are doing. If Alpha finds out that you are ruining his reputation by spreading false rumors, you already know how he will react to this information." It caused the woman's eyes to widen. They wanted to apologize to Sophia in fear that she would complain to Brian about it. Nevertheless, Sophia did not give them any chance to say sorry. She headed to Brian's office. When she knocked on the door, she heard his voice and entered the cabin. She gulped when she saw him focusing on his laptop. He appeared to be utterly devastated by his work. What exactly is he focused on? The meeting is the only thing he has to do today, she thought. With a low pace, she made her way to the desk. She put down the coffee mug in front of him and said it in a lower tone. "Alpha, your coffee." She peeked over at the laptop to get a glimpse of what he was doing. The moment he turned his gaze to her, she remained frozen in her position. I was just looking." He returned his attention to the laptop and continued to type on it. She noticed that he did not touch the coffee mug. In fact, his breakfast was also on the desk. He had not started eating either. "Alpha, I think you should eat something. It won't be long before we have to leave for the meeting." Brian looked at her and reminded her in a chilly tone, "You don't have to remind me of anything. Simply eat your breakfast and then head back to your cabin so that you can get back to work." Her gaze was fixed on him. She was hurt by his words. What was it that caused him to become angry with her once more? She had done nothing wrong today. Did I do something?" She was interrupted by a knock on the door. The knock caused her to frown because it disturbed her conversation in the middle. The expression on her face was one of obvious annoyance. "Come in," Brian said. The door was opened, and Bruce entered the cabin. Sophia parted her lips as she saw him enter the room. Didn't Alpha tell him to wait in the lobby? After gathering her thoughts, she turned her attention to Brian. This man has a deep affection for his brother. It was impossible for him to refrain from calling him within 15 minutes, despite the fact that he had made the decision to make him wait. Bruce glanced at Sophia. She turned her gaze away from him and maintained a quiet stance next to Brian. "Brother, sit down." Brian made a motion with his hand toward the chair on the other side. Bruce sat on the chair and said, "Thanks, brother. I thought you would call me in the last hour. Won't you wait if I make you wait?" "Of course." Brian nodded his head after hearing his younger brother. He turned his head to look at Sophia. She looked at him and asked, "Yes?" She thought he wanted something. "I want to talk to him alone. Excuse us." "Sure." Having the realization that she ought to have said that before him, Sophia hurriedly made her way to the door, but she stopped when she heard Brian once again. "Take your breakfast set with you." As she turned her attention to the desk, she noticed that the name of her box was also present there. She was confused about who sent it because she had only told the staff about Brian's breakfast. She gazed at Brian, who was still looking at her. She could not help but feel that he cared for her. He was the one who asked for her breakfast, since he knew she was hungry too. "Thanks for the breakfast, Alpha." Sophia grabbed the box from the desk and turned to leave. "What happened to your hand?" Bruce asked, getting on his feet as he grabbed her hand. She tried to pull her hand away from his grip. "Nothing." "How did your finger burn? Who hurt you?" Bruce asked. Anger could be heard in his tone of voice. "I'm totally fine. It's just a little wound," Sophia replied, trying to free her hand from him. As a result of the hot liquor, the skin on her finger was swollen, and she could see that it was turning red. While trying to move away from Bruce, her eyes landed on Brian. His eyes were on her hand, which was gripped by Bruce. "Let me treat your fing." "Leave her hand. She is not a child," Brian spoke up. Bruce halted his movements and twisted his neck to look at him. "But bro." "Leave her hand," Brian said once again calmly. However, his dark voice was enough to make Bruce let go of Sophia's hand. As soon as he released her hand, Sophia left the cabin to not create any arguments in the room. Bruce turned his head away from the door, which Sophia had just closed after leaving. He sighed and turned to Brian, who was glaring at him. "Brother, I was Sit down." Bruce immediately followed his order and sat on the chair again. Brian reached his hand to the coffee that Sophia had made for him and took a gulp. He then turned his attention to Bruce and asked, "What do you want?" Bruce tightened his fists as he replied to what was on his mind. "Sophia." Just the moment he let out Sophie's name, Brian's eyes turned red. Bruce lowered his head to avoid his eyes. "Brother, I can't stay away from her. I swear, I have tried, but I couldn't." Brian stood up from his chair and lit a cigarette. He walked to the window and looked outside. "What will you take to leave her side?" he muttered under his breath. Bruce raised his head. He stood up as well, but he did not have the courage to walk over to him. "I don't want anything, brother. I only want her." "She can't be yours," Brian replied after taking a puff on the smoke. Bruce stared at him for a while. Brian turned to him and said, "You are done getting your answer. You can leave now." Bruce looked into his eyes as he could see how dangerous his big brother was. "I bet you have never shown her this side of yourself. She is so naive to understand Alpha Brian." Bruce's words made Brian grimace at him. "She is my mate. I will handle her by myself. You don't have to worry about her anymore." Bruce heaved a sigh and shook his head. "Brother, she is too young to deal with everything. Don't make her a pawn of your game." Sophia was waiting outside Brian's cabin as she kept glancing at the door. She did not know what was happening inside, but she was afraid that Bruce would say something wrong about her to Brian. At the very moment that the door to the CEO's cabin opened, Sophia stood tall and straight while leaning her back against the pillar that was located in close proximity to the interior of the cabin. She took notice of Bruce as he emerged from the cabin. His gaze landed on her as he came to a complete stop in his tracks. She tried to ignore him and proceeded to enter the cabin by walking past him. Surprisingly, Bruce did not stop her and left the office. Sophia glanced at Brian, who was standing behind the desk. He looked gloomy yet calm. "Alpha," she mumbled. When his eyes met hers, she took a deep breath. This man's gaze was so penetrating that it seemed as if he might shoot her heart through the eyes. "I want them to come here for the meeting. Inform them about it." He sounded commanding, which indicated that he was mad at something. "Yes, Alpha." Sophia hurriedly dialed a number. She informed the secretary of the other Alpha and told him to come to the Morrison group directly. While she was taking a quick check at the lunchbox, she observed that it appeared to be untouched. She wanted to ask him why he had not had his lunch yet, but the room had turned colder. She assumed that the two brothers had possibly had a verbal fight. She wondered who had won the argument. Sophia left the cabin to set up everything for the meeting. In light of the fact that it was a meeting with a different pack company and not with any of the inner companies of this pack, she had to make a few more arrangements, such as booking hotels for them. "Everything done?" she asked other employees who were in charge of the conference room. The employees gave her a nod in agreement. Sophia smiled at them and began to check the files for the projects. She emailed all the managers about the preponed meeting since the time had changed because of Alpha Brian's mood. Sophia huffed while putting her hand on her waist. She had a glance around to determine whether or not everything was on the right track. Perfect. She clapped her hands and left the conference room. Then she made her way back to Brian's cabin. "Alpha, everything is done. Now we are just waiting for Alpha Noble." Brian heard her but did not reply to her. A sigh came out of her mouth as she expressed her dissatisfaction with his unexpected behavior. "This man is bipolar. I just can't understand his mood swings," she murmured while standing close to the desk. She jerked up when she heard Brian. "Did you just say something?" She looked at him with wide eyes and shook her head immediately. When his eyes met hers, the room fell into complete silence. She made another attempt to read his gaze, but she was unable to do so. Because of his calculated action and unreadable eyes, he could crack anything in front of him even without touching it with his hands. She gulped when she found him staring at her. What was going on in his mind? "Alpha, what hap?" She was interrupted when the door opened. Beta Robert entered the cabin with Delta Edger. Their gaze landed on her. They waved at her. She gave them a small smile. "Hello," she greeted them. "Hello, beauty," Edger said, winking at her. She blushed and looked away from him. Robert went to sit on a chair at the desk. Edger laughed when he saw Sophia's cheeks flushing red. He turned around and his eyes fell on Brian, who was looking at him. "Bro, come on. It was just a wink. There is no need to feel overly possessive." Sophia was stunned by his statement toward Brian. She glanced at Brian, who rolled his eyes at Edger. She cleared her throat and said, "Alpha, I'm going to my cabin. I will inform you when Alpha Noble arrives here." When she got no answer from Brian, she left the cabin. She waited for Alpha Noble's arrival at the company. After receiving the news from the receptionist that Alpha Noble had arrived, she did not waste any time and headed straight to Brian's cabin. She informed the three people to come to the conference room. All of them went there together. When Sophia entered the conference room, she noticed all the managers of every department were present there. They stood up and bowed to Brian as he proceeded to the head chair. Alpha Noble also got to his feet when Brian came close to his chair. They greeted each other by shaking hands. Alpha Noble was a middle-aged man who seemed to be experienced in the business world. As the meeting started, Sophia stood beside Brian while holding a file. Troy was making a move with his hand to wave at her, and she cast a glance in his direction. Following the exchange of a smile with him, she returned to her professional demeanor. "You will get 65% profit, but what will my pack get in return?" Alpha Noble asked the marketing manager who had just presented the project on the projector. Every manager tried to put their points forward in an effort to convince Alpha Noble. "What else?" Once again, Alpha Noble inquired. When Sophia noticed that Alpha Noble did not appear to be willing to accept the agreement, she pondered about it and then replied, "You are receiving support from our pack. This is the most significant opportunity for you to investigate further fields. I believe this reason is enough for you to accept the deal." Everyone turned their heads at her in shock. She shrugged her shoulders. She was a business student. She could see what strategy Alpha Noble was using. He had the desire to accept the deal, but he was merely trying to get an edge through negotiation. Alpha Noble looked impressed by her words. He turned his attention to Brian and chuckled. "Your secretary is smart. She knows what to say in any situation." Brian looked indifferently at him. Sophia was perplexed as to why, on earth, he had not yet made an effort to convince Alpha Noble. "Do you also have something to say, Alpha Brian?" Alpha Noble asked. Brian gave him a nod. He looked at Beta Robert, who handed him the cigarette packet as if Brian had asked for it in his mind link. Brian pulled out a cigarette and put it between his lips. Sophia was shocked. During the meeting, smoking was considered to be a form of disrespectful behavior toward the other alphas. After all, it's a professional conference. However, he was Alpha Brian. In no way did he follow any of the regulations. Sophia stepped aside when Edger stood up and came to light Brian's cigarette. She was able to get a sense of the entire room becoming anxious. The gaze of Alpha Noble was fixed on Alpha Brian. 70% of the profit, Brian replied after taking a moment to inhale the smoke. Alpha Noble frowned at him with a confused look. "What do you mean?" "I want 70% of the profit," Brian remarked as he removed the cigarette from his mouth and held it between his two fingers. Alpha Noble and his beta, who had come with him, looked at Brian in shock. "But we were talking about 65% and you agreed with it." Brian scoffed at him. "What about wasting my time for the past 20 minutes? But don't you think you need to convince me?" Brian raised a brow and asked, "Do you really think Alpha Brian needs to convince anyone? Other alphas are perishing to get the deal. Go and give it to one of them." Sophia was shocked when she heard Brian's warning directed toward Alpha Noble, since she thought that Brian would let the deal go. In a situation where people tried to convince others, he liked to warn them. "If you go out of my pack without signing the deal, I will close every border for your pack business. Let's see which pack will come to your aid when your pack members start starving to death." The declaration that Brian made startled everyone in the room. It came out like an open challenge to Alpha Noble. As soon as the managers realized that their alpha had become angry, they all lowered their heads in agreement. On the other hand, Sophia was fixated on Brian the entire time. He was an arrogant man who did not like to lose. If he wanted to have what he aimed for, he would do everything to get it. Well, he caught Alpha Noble's weakness, and he used it in the meeting since he was a mighty man who could do all those things that he was saying. For once, Sophia felt the man she was staring at was a whole different person. Though he got mad at her sometimes, the way he was looking at Alpha Noble, it was something else. His eyes were dark and his face was relaxed. It was more frightening than a man who looked mad. Sophia felt a sudden urge to see him in his wolf form. The man who was cold in front of other alphas. What would his wolf look like? Suddenly, she remembered the last time she shifted in the woods. It had been a while. She wanted to go for a run. She desired to take in the crisp air and bask in the glow of the moonlight without any restriction. While looking at Brian, she was so lost in her thoughts that she had missed the conversation running in the room. She came out of her thoughts when she heard Alpha Noble. "Alpha Brian, take my apology if I somehow offend you," Alpha Noble spoke. Brian nodded his head slightly in response. Sophia's eyes shifted to Brian once again. His lips were biting the cigarette between them. She gulped when she remembered how those lips tasted. She felt them softly when they touched hers that night. "How can I take your apology when you are not here to come for business but to wail for profits?" Brian asked. Alpha Noble's Beta stood up and said, "My Alpha came here with the intention of giving the deal to your pack. However, we ended up offending you unintentionally. Forgive us." Beta Robert looked at the man and replied, "Only the land is yours, but the whole investment is ours. How can you think of getting more than 35%? Delta Edger did not halt himself either, as he said, "Since Alpha wanted 70%, now you will have to give us 70%. End of the discussion. Alpha Noble and his Beta exchanged a glance, then nodded at each other. During the time Alpha Noble and his Beta discussed it with each other in their mind links, Brian kept his gaze on them while smoking. It looked as if he was reading their minds. Sophia bit her bottom lip as she observed Brian carefully. No matter what he did, it always appeared to be mysterious. He was the king of mysteries and enigmas. She was confused as to why Brian was so furious today. It was clear that his mood was not fine at all. She kept thinking about what Bruce had said to him that made him this mad. "Okay, Alpha Brian, I agree with your decision, but as you are getting more profit than we expected before, please don't forget to look after my pack." Brian took the last puff before throwing the cigarette and looking at him. "Of course. I have no reason to attack your pack. You are making me happy. I'll make your pack members happy." One of the employees stood up and rushed to the printer when Delta Edgar added the new clause of profit to the contract. When Alpha Noble finally got his hands on the contract documents, he went through the process of reading them over and over again before signing them. "Don't worry, I never backstab others, but if they try to trick me, I stab them in their chest directly." Brian's words froze everyone. Alpha Noble slowly handed the papers to him. Brian signed the papers and then stood up. Following him, everyone got to their feet. "Thanks for the deal," Alpha Noble said. It was a big deal for him because the business was going to run in his pack. Brian gave him a nod and said, "Come to the celebration party tomorrow night." The expression on Alpha Noble's face changed. This was due to the fact that he thought Brian was dissatisfied with the contract. Nevertheless, when he learned about the party, he had a slight sense of relaxation. "Of course, I will," Alpha Noble replied with a warm grin. Without giving others another glance, Brian left the conference room. Sophia noticed everyone headed to the door to leave. Troy walked to her and said, "Everyone was on the verge of losing their breath a while ago. Alpha is so dangerous. His aura is undefeatable." Sophia glanced at Alpha Noble and his Beta, whom Beta Robert and Delta Edger were escorting out. "He lost 5% without any reason," she mumbled. Troy's laugh came to her ears as she turned to him. "What?" she asked. "You should be happy that Alpha didn't cancel the deal. Wasn't it an important deal? It was more important for them than us." After a brief conversation with Troy, Sophia made her way to Brian's cabin. She opened the door and saw him standing by the window, looking outside. "I wonder what he always looks at from there? Road? Sky?" she thought, closing the door behind her. "What do you want?" Brian asked without turning around, as if he were aware that she was the one who had entered his cabin. Sophia's steps halted. She took a deep breath and decided to talk to him. She walked over to him and stood behind him. "Alpha, are you okay? You look mad at something," she mumbled. But when he turned around, she almost took a step back. His gaze was sharper than any knife. "Are you willing to get back with Bruce again?" he asked out of nowhere. Her eyes widened. She was at a loss to comprehend the reason for his question. He observed her expression. A frown appeared on his face, and he turned back to the window. "Still confused?" he muttered under his breath. The realization dawned on Sophia that he had misunderstood her reaction. It was just that she was surprised by his sudden question. She looked at his tall figure. It was like his broad shoulder was pulling her towards him. She took a deep breath and then lifted her hands. She slowly wrapped her hands around his torso from behind. She leaned on his back and mumbled, "I don't want to get back with him. I don't have anything for him or any other man. I—" She paused as she almost lost her breath while talking. It took her all her strength to talk to him about it. Her hands gradually slipped away from his body when she felt him moving. As he turned around, he looked at her. His body towered over her. She tried to avoid his questioning gaze by looking away from him, but his hand grasped her waist and pulled her toward him. "You know what you are getting into, right?" Sophia blushed as she lowered her head. She recalled the time when Brian told her that she caught his attention. The way he always showed concern for her and took care of her safety, she believed he had feelings for her in his heart. "I know," she mumbled in reply as she bit her bottom lip to stop smiling. He raised her chin and made her look at him. She looked into his eyes and got lost in them. She wanted to stroke his thick brows, which showed her his mood. She placed her hands on his chest and tried to feel if his heart beat faster with the closeness. However, instead of him, she began to feel her heart sprint when he lowered his head. His face came close to hers, and she shut her eyes. She was waiting for his lips to take over her soft lips. But they never touched her lips. She opened her eyes to look at Brian. He was looking at her hands, which rested on his chest. "What happened to your hand?" he asked. She immediately moved her hands from his chest and hid them behind her. "Nothing, just a little wound." He frowned at her and moved his hand behind her waist. His hand lightly touched her lower back, and she let out a gasp in response. Her lips parted in shock as she felt his finger brush her back to get her hands. His eyes were fixed on her. The way she reacted to his simple touch twitched him inside. He grabbed her hands and drew them to look at her hands. He saw she got hurt in a finger of her right hand. Without any warning, he put the finger into his mouth. Her eyes were widened by his action. The way he licked her finger was too much for her to take. Instead of feeling pain, she began to feel unknown sensations. Nevertheless, she attempted to draw out her finger, but he gazed at her, which caused her to become frozen. She looked at him shyly, then her eyes shifted to his lips, which were devouring her finger. Was he trying to heal her? But it was not a cut or a big wound. Why was the process so intimating? She wanted to hide her face in shyness. "It's okay. It's not a big wound," she muttered in a lower tone. "Who said I was healing your wound?" he asked after removing her finger from his mouth. She was stunned. Then, after releasing his grip on her hand, he stepped closer to her. She retreated a few steps, but she came to a halt when she found herself leaning her back against the desk. Upon observing that she was nervous, he smirked at her. He put his hands on the desk beside her on both sides and looked at her so closely. A slight leaning back toward the desk caused her to come dangerously close to falling on the glass of the desk. "It will be headed by an ointment anyway. I just wanted to do that. That's why I did it," he whispered on her face. He attracted her with his warmth, his breath, and his cologne. She was, however, confused by the words that he had said. "Why did you want to lick my finger?" she asked with a perplexed look. As he looked at her with a raised brow, he chuckled and then stepped away from her. Sophia stood straight and looked at him. After giving her a pat on the head, he grinned at her. "You are still very young for me." Sophia felt lost in his beautiful smile. The way his lips parted and he grinned at her, she wanted to watch it daily. His statements, on the other hand, caused her to frown at him. By young, what exactly did he mean? Was he referring to my age? "I am not young. I'm 18 now, and soon I'll be 19, she thought. She knew he was 5 years older than her, but that did not mean he would think that she was younger. "I am not young. I am an adult," she replied, pouting her lips. He tilted his head to the side and asked, "Oh, really?" It seemed as though he took pleasure in her rage, so she gave him a slight nod. "Yes, I am." Suddenly, he leaned on her, which caught her off guard. "Then let me warn you, big girl, prepare yourself for me, because you have awakened the beast inside me. Even if you are observing me, I am not always as calm as I am right now." Her face flushed red as she tried to process his words. Her heartbeat began to race, which was audible to him clearly. He gently stroked her red cheeks with his knuckles. Relax, I won't hunt you alive. She gulped and looked away from him. She did not know what to say. All she wanted to do was cover her face to avoid his gaze. In an attempt to avoid being embarrassed, she carefully pushed his chest away and then fled from his cabin. He did not stop her either. Sophia patted her cheeks as her pulse ran too fast. No one had ever talked to her like that, not even Bruce. The whole day, she was in her cabin and did not go to Brian's office room again. However, she kept smiling alone whenever she glanced at her finger. It looked less swollen, as if his saliva was a cure. She slowly lifted her hand and kissed her finger lightly while thinking about Brian. She covered her face when she realized what she was doing. "He is making me crazy," she said to herself. When it was time to leave the company, she stood outside Brian's cabin door. Brian opened the door just as she was about to knock on it. She took a step back and looked away from him. He walked past her and started to walk toward the elevator. She followed him behind with a flushed face. When they entered the elevator, she thought Brian would say something to her, but surprisingly, he was silent. He was observing her through the elevator mirror, and she became aware of his gaze. As she turned her head to the opposite side, she got the terrifying sensation that she had lost her mind. When they came outside the building, Brian's driver opened the door for her. She turned to look at Brian. He motioned for her to get inside. She got in the car, and Brian sat next to her. While she was sitting next to him, she tried to calm herself by biting her lips. She waited for him to say something. But throughout the entire ride, he did not speak a word. When the driver came to a stop in front of her house, she opened the door in order to exit the car. At that time, Brian stopped her by grabbing her hand. She turned her head to look at him. "Don't forget about the party tomorrow." She nodded at him. "Yes." He stared at her for a while, then said, "I will take you somewhere after the party." Sophia could not sleep much last night. Her mind kept going back to the words that Brian had said. The thought of where Brian might take her was going through her mind. She was awake as she was smiling while looking at the ceiling. The alarm kept ringing since she had set the time on her phone last night. She turned her head and reached out her hand to get her phone, which was on the nightstand. She turned off all of the alarms and yawned as she sat up in the bed. "I couldn't sleep last night," she murmured. She got out of bed and walked to the window. The weather was cold, and the chilly breeze hugged her body the moment she stood by the window. She sneezed as a cold wind entered her nostrils suddenly. She rubbed her nose and closed the window glass hurriedly. She walked to the mirror on the dressing table and looked at herself. Thank God I didn't get to see a pair of dark circles under my eyes. Otherwise, how would I have gone to the party with that face? She glanced at the clock. She still had time for university, so she took time to shower and then got ready to go to the university. When she left her room, she noticed her mother setting up the table for breakfast. She could not talk to her last night, therefore she thought to do that right now. After she had finished helping her mother, the two of them sat down at the table and began eating breakfast together. "Mom, I have to tell you something," Sophia said to her mother. Her mother gave her a nod to continue. "Mom, I will come home late tonight, so don't worry about me and sleep in time, okay?" "Why? Are you going to Sarah's house today?" "No, Mom. We have a celebration party tonight, so Alpha said we might have some work after the party." "What work?" Sophia tried to gather her thoughts, as she could not say that they were going out. "Some office stuff, like signing papers and all. You know a CEO has so much work to do, and as his secretary, I have to stay beside him." Her mother thought for some time, then nodded her head in agreement. "If you will be with Alpha, then I don't have to worry." Sophia smiled at her mother when she saw how much she believed in Brian. She wondered how she would react if she learned that Brian was her mate. She assumed her mother would be really happy. After having breakfast with her mother, Sophia left her house. When she was heading to the bus stop from her house, she noticed a familiar car was moving toward her. She stopped walking and looked at the car. The car stopped right beside her, and the driver came out of the car. Sophia took a quick glimpse at the window of the back seat and tried to peer inside. The driver stood in front of her and said, "Alpha is not inside the car." Sophia looked away from the window in embarrassment that the driver had caught her. "I wasn't thinking that," she mumbled. Brian's driver then handed her a bag. The bag, which bore the name of a prestigious brand, caught her attention as she looked into it. "What's this?" she asked him. "Alpha sent it to you. He told me to deliver it to your house early in the morning since I wouldn't be able to locate you later. It's good to see that I did not have to go to your house and find you here." "But what is inside it?" "I don't know, miss. It should be up to you to look into it. I have no right to know that." Sophia nodded her head and thanked him. The driver asked her if he would drive her to the university, but she rejected his offer and told him that she could go herself. When the driver drove off from there, Sophia opened the bag and looked inside it. She found a stunning silk dress in a crimson color. It looked like a dress of great quality at quite an expensive price. She noticed a small card inside. She quickly grabbed the card and opened it. "Wear this for tonight's party. You don't have to come to the office today. See you at the party." She stared at the beautiful handwriting, which captivated her mind. A bright smile appeared on her face. She let out a long, deep breath as butterflies began to flit around inside her stomach. She put the card inside the bag and proceeded to the bus stop in a good mood. She took a bus and went to the university. As soon as she stepped onto her campus, everyone began to glance at her. She frowned at them and noticed that they were looking at her bag. It slipped her mind that people were fond of paying a great deal of attention to well-known brands. As she entered the Faculty of Business Studies, she paid no attention to their stares and proceeded inside. She called Sarah and asked her where she was. Sarah told her that she was in the cafeteria with Nolan. When Sophia looked at the time on her watch, she realized that there were still 20 minutes remaining until the beginning of her first lesson. She decided to join her friends in the cafeteria. As soon as Sophia arrived at their table, Sarah jumped up from her seat and welcomed her with a hug. "Sophia?" Nolan gave her a side hug and went back to sit on his chair. "What's up, champion?" "Sarah said you didn't come to the university yesterday because of a deal. Did our pack get it?" he asked. Sophia told them how Brian won the deal and then signed it with 70% of the profit share. Their jaws dropped as they could not believe how Brian got more than 5% without losing a single thing in the deal. After a few minutes, Nolan left the cafeteria when his friends came to meet him. "So, baby, what's going on? Is your alpha happy to get the deal?" Sarah asked, wiggling her brows. "I don't know his happiness, but he did throw a party tonight." "Can I come, please?" Sophia held her and replied in an upset tone. "I wish I could invite you. It's a business party." Sarah shook her head. "It's okay." Sophia felt bad that she could not invite her friend, but suddenly her face brightened. "Hey, wait! I can't invite you, but I can invite your dad. Uncle is also a businessman, and I can add him to the invitation list. You can come there with his invitation." Sarah clapped her hands. "You are right." Sophia immediately checked the invitation list. Due to the fact that she was the personal secretary of the CEO, she had the authority to include or exclude anyone from the guest list. Done. "Yes," both of them chimed with contentment. Sarah's eyes fell on the bag, and she asked, "What's this? Did you buy this dress for the party? I bet you are into seducing your mate, babe, because it's a damn expensive brand." Sophia gave the bag to Sarah to see and mumbled, "He sent it to me to wear it tonight." Sarah smirked at her. "I see." Sophia cleared her throat and looked away while saying, "And he said he would take me somewhere after the party." Sarah's eyes widened and then she broke into a bright grin. "Oh my God, he asked you for a date. Sophia, I think he will confess his feelings and ask you to be his Luna. Are you ready to enter the hall?" Sarah asked Sophia as both of them stood out of the party hall where the celebration was going on. Sophia took a deep breath as she glanced inside the hall from outside. The whole day she was nervous about tonight. As she told Sarah, she invited Sarah's father. Sarah took the opportunity and asked his father to let her attend the party. She brought Nolan as her partner. He went to park the car and would join them soon. "No, I'm not. I'm feeling nervous to see him," Sophia mumbled, turning away from the door. Sarah put her hands on her waist and gave her a look. "Babe, why are you feeling so nervous? You are looking damn hot. I must say Alpha Brian has a choice. This dress fits on you so perfectly that it's showing this dress is only designed for your body. Sophia held her hand and said, "Thanks, Sarah. You helped me get ready." Sarah winked at her. "You mean to give you a hot makeup?" Sophia chuckled and hit her arm lightly. She turned her head and found Nolan approaching them. He was in a formal suit, which gave him a mature look. "Ladies, let's go." Both Sophia and Sarah nodded their heads and entered the hall together with him. They felt amazed by the decoration of the hall. The decorator really put all of their effort into it. After all, it was a party where the head alpha would be present. Sophia looked around as her eyes tried to find the only person in the hall who always made her heart beat faster. She could not find him, but her eyes met a few men's gazes who kept their eyes on her. She ignored their gazes and stood in a corner with her friends. "Oh, hi, beauty." When she heard the voice, she immediately turned in that direction. She spotted Delta Edger coming on her way. She smiled at him. "Edger." He stopped in front of her and looked at her appearance. "I almost thought I was looking at some famous model. You look pretty like blossoms." Sophia chuckled at his remarks. "Thank you." She glanced at her friends, who were totally unaware of who Edger was. "They are my friends, Sarah and Nolan, and this is the Delta of our pack, Delta Edger." She introduced them to each other. They only knew Beta Robert since they had met him in the hotel and then hung out with him in the club. So now, after meeting with Edger, they feel delighted. They greeted him. Edger gave them a nod and returned his attention to Sophia. "The CEO hasn't arrived yet. His secretary comes before him." Sophia realized that Brian had not come to the party yet. She thought she was late since he told her to come to the party at 8 p.m. After having a brief conversation with Sophia, Edger left her side. Sophia kept glancing at the door. She was waiting for Brian. Though she noticed Alpha Noble, she did not go to him. She wanted to go to converse with anyone when Brian would come. "Ah, my baby is waiting for her mate," Sarah whispered in her ear. "Shh, no one knows about it," Sophia reminded her. "Oh, come on. After tonight, he will scream to everyone that you are his mate," she replied, smirking at Sophia. Sophia bit her bottom lip to control her laugh as Sarah began to make expressions on her face to tease her. "Here he is, Alpha Brian." Someone spoke out loudly. Sophia immediately turned her head toward the door and looked at the mighty man who had just entered the hall with a powerful aura that no one could compare. Brian was in an expensive, handmade black suit. Under his suit jacket, he was wearing a black shirt. Two of the buttons on his shirt were open, which made all the women around the hall go crazy. Sophia's jaw dropped as she stared at Brian. He was so handsome that she could not take her eyes off of him. "He is so hot. I wish I did not have a mate. I could have chased after him. For this man, I can leave my alpha too. It's just that he is an aggressive man and does not let women touch him. Otherwise, every woman is head over heels for him." Sophia heard whispers of young women who were drooling over Brian. She frowned at them. She did not like their thoughts about Brian. Throughout the whole hall, one name was echoing, and that was Alpha Brian. He was in every woman's dreams and desires. They wanted to have him not only because of his position, but also because of the personality he had. He was cold, yet dyingly handsome. His one glance could kill any woman in any pack. "Don't be jealous. He is so attractive. What can other ladies do?" Sarah said to her. Nolan glared at Sarah. "You know I'm standing next to you, right?" "Baby, you know we all like celebrities, but that doesn't mean we can have them, so don't worry about it. He is her mate, and you are mine." Nolan became calm with her words. She hugged his arm and said, "Don't get mad, I will make it up to you." Nolan smirked at her. "Sure." Sophia felt that she should leave the couple's side to let them enjoy the party with each other. "I'm going to the other side. You both can enjoy the party, okay?" Sarah said, looking at them. Sarah was about to oppose as she started to speak. "No, it's okay." But she paused when she looked behind Sophia. She looked frozen, as did Nolan. Sophia stared at them with confusion and turned around, only to find Brian standing behind her. She gasped, almost losing her breath. His mysterious eyes met hers. They shifted from her eyes and slowly moved down to her whole body. Sophia felt he was brushing her whole body with his gaze. "Alpha," she mumbled after gulping. His gaze returned as he looked into her eyes. His dark eyes made her feel shy. He lowered his head and moved his mouth close to her ear, then whispered, "I didn't know you would look this perfect in this dress. You're ravishing." Sophia blushed when she heard Brian. She lowered her head to hide her flushed face. Sarah cleared her throat as she and Nolan were standing next to them. Sophia felt embarrassed as she turned her head away from Brian. Brian stood straight and looked at Sarah, then shifted his eyes to Nolan, who looked nervous around him. "Alpha, nice to see you again," Sarah said, smiling at him brightly. Yes, Alpha. Congratulations to you for the deal," Nolan said, stretching his hand out toward Brian. He thought Brian would not shake his hand with him, so he was about to take his hand back to him, but Brian extended his hand and shook hands with him. Nolan's eyes brightened. He smiled at him lightly. It was like a fortune for the pack members to even meet once with the head alpha. So shaking hands with him was something beyond expectations. "When she added your father's name to the invitation list, I knew it was because of you, but she could have told me directly," Brian said to Sarah. Sarah's jaw dropped as she glanced at Sophia after hearing Brian. She nudged her elbow at Sophia and said, "Alpha cares for you a lot. Wow." Her voice was audible. Sophia gave her a look to shut her mouth since Brian was also listening to her. "Enjoy the party," Brian told Sarah, and Nolan then turned her head toward Sophia. He extended her hand toward her. "Let's go." Sophia looked at him. "Where?" He raised a brow after hearing her question. "In just one day's break from work, you have forgotten that you are my secretary?" He was right. She almost forgot that she had come here as the personal secretary of Alpha Brian. She immediately grabbed his hand and shook her head at him. "Sorry, I didn't mean it." He held her hand softly and headed in another direction in the hall. Each and everyone's attention was focused on Brian. They noticed how he was holding his secretary's hand. They had never seen him getting so close with another woman, except his ex-fiancée Mila, who almost became his Luna. While walking beside Brian, Sophia fixed her eyes on him. Even his side profile captured her heart. She almost questioned the moon goddess about how she gave her such an attractive man as her mate. "Congratulations, Alpha Noble," Brian said, standing in front of the middle-aged man, who looked really happy. His beaming face astounded Sophia. Didn't he lose so much on the project? How can he be so happy tonight, she thought. "All thanks to you, Alpha Brian," Alpha Noble said to him. Sophia greeted him with a smile. "Hello, Miss Sophia. You are such a beauty. If I had a son, I would have approached you for him." Sophia did not know what to say. She glanced at Brian, who looked indifferent, but he was not silent. He replied to Alpha Noble with a calm tone. "I would not have let her go." Alpha Noble looked at him with surprise. "Why?" Before Brian could respond to his question, Betta Roberts' voice came to their ears. If he let go of his beautiful secretary, who would take over her job? He won't find another one like her. Alpha Noble chuckled and nodded his head in agreement. "You are right. She is intelligent enough to be in that position. The way she replied in the meeting, I observed her there. Alpha Brian is quite lucky to have her." Sophia was standing there quietly while listening to the praises. She felt relaxed when she saw that others were appreciating her in front of Brian. She did not want him to feel disappointed by her in any way. The party lasted for hours. When it was time for dinner, Sarah asked Sophia to join her and Nolan. Sophia was about to say yes, but her phone began to ring at that moment. She looked at the screen and found out that it was Brian who was calling her. He was outside for a few minutes, so she assumed that he had gone out to smoke. She received the call and put the phone close to her ear. "Hello? Come outside. We are leaving the party." Her lips parted as she glanced at her friends, then mumbled in a lower tone. "Alpha, don't you want to have dinner? If you are hungry, then don't be concerned about it. I won't starve you to death. You are going somewhere with me." His voice was mocking yet demanding. It was almost as if she palmed her forehead as she realized that she had forgotten that he had asked her to go out with him after the party. She had been so preoccupied with keeping herself busy at the business party that she had completely forgotten about it. "I'm coming, Alpha." After hanging up the phone, she turned to her friends. She held Sarah's hand and apologized to her. "I'm so sorry. I have to leave now." Sarah's brows lifted as she understood that she was going with Brian. She hugged Sophia and whispered in her ear, "Go, go. Best of luck, my baby. I can't wait to hear his way of confessing from your mouth." Sophia turned red. When Nolan asked where she was going, Sarah said she would tell him later. After saying goodbye to her and Nolan, she walked out of the hall. As soon as she came outside, she found Brian's car outside the hall. He was smoking while leaning against his car. His one hand was holding the cigarette, and the other hand was inside his pocket. Sophia felt that, like the hero of a movie, he was waiting for his heroine. She lowered her head and walked toward him. As she reached his car, he opened the passenger door for her. "Where is your driver?" she asked, looking at him. He threw the cigarette on the ground and smashed it with his shoe, then replied to her, "I'm going to drive." As she sat down in the passenger seat, she noticed that he had moved to the opposite side of the car, and then he sat down in the driver's seat. She fastened the seatbelt when he started the car and headed in a direction that was unknown to her.